The world outside was draped in a thick blanket of snow, the kind that muffles every sound and turns the night into a realm of hushed wonder. Inside, my cozy living room became a sanctuary of warmth and comfort. As I sat nestled in my favorite armchair, the soft glow of the fireplace cast dancing shadows around the room, and the scent of pine from the logs filled the air. I cradled a steaming mug of tea, its warmth seeping into my hands, and opened an old, well-loved book, ready to lose myself in its pages. It was in these quiet moments that I felt most at peace, far removed from the clamor and chaos of the outside world. The gentle crackling of the fire and the rhythmic ticking of the clock on the mantel were the only sounds that accompanied me. I took a sip of my tea, its herbal blend soothing and familiar, as I turned the pages of my book, immersing myself in the narrative. Suddenly, a sound jolted me from my reverie. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but unmistakably familiar. It was a voice I hadn't heard in years, yet one that was etched deeply into my memory, my father's voice. A chill ran down my spine, not from the cold, but from a mix of shock and an unamiable emotion that welled up inside me. How can this be? I thought to myself, setting my tea down with a trembling hand. My father had passed away years ago, and yet here I was, hearing his voice as clearly as if he were in the room with me. It was impossible, irrational, yet undeniably real. I glanced around, half expecting to see his familiar figure, but the room was as it had been. Just me, the fire, and the shadows. The voice spoke again, this time more clearly. It wasn't just a random utterance, but words laced with warmth and affection, words my father used to say to me. Memories flooded back, of childhood, of his laughter, of the times we spent together. The supernatural nature of this moment was overshadowed by a surge of nostalgia and love. As the voice continued, it became less like a ghostly echo and more like a bridge connecting past and present. It was as if my father was right there with me, sharing in the tranquility of this snowy evening. The room, with its warm light and comforting fire, seemed to embrace his presence, blurring the lines between what was real and what was beyond understanding. I closed my book, no longer able to focus on the words. Instead, I listened, letting the sound of his voice envelop me. It was more than just auditory. It was a presence, a feeling of being watched over and cared for. The voice spoke of mundane things, of days gone by, and of love, an enduring love that not even death could diminish. With each word, the initial shock gave way to a sense of peace. It was as if the universe had granted me a rare gift, a chance to feel my father's presence once more, to hear his voice, to remember the bond we shared. The supernatural aspect of it all seemed insignificant compared to the emotional connection that was being rekindled. The encounter, though otherworldly, was comforting. It was a reassurance that those we love never truly leave us, that they remain in our hearts and memories, sometimes making their presence felt in the most unexpected ways. I felt a warmth that wasn't just from the fire or the tea, but from something deeper, something eternal. Gradually, the voice began to fade, becoming softer and more distant. I reached out, as if trying to physically grasp the fading sound, wanting to hold on to this connection for as long as possible. But like a whisper carried away by the wind, it slipped away, leaving a profound silence in its wake. In the quiet that followed, I sat motionless, processing what had just happened. The rational part of my mind struggled to find explanations, to dismiss the experience as a figment of my imagination, perhaps a trick of the mind fueled by memories and the cozy ambience. Yet the emotional part of me clung to the experience, finding solace in the inexplicable. I picked up my mug of tea, now lukewarm, and took a sip. The familiar taste brought me back to the present, to the tangible world of my living room, with its familiar furnishings and the steady heartbeat of the clock. The supernatural had receded, leaving behind the normal, the explainable, the routine. I stood up and walked to the window, peering out at the snow-covered landscape. The world outside seemed unchanged, serene and undisturbed. Yet I felt different, altered in a way I couldn't quite articulate. The encounter with my father's voice had left an indelible mark, a bittersweet blend of joy and sadness. As I returned to my chair, the room felt emptier, yet somehow fuller. The absence of the voice was palpable, but its echoes lingered, resonating in the quiet space. I reopened my book, but found it hard to focus on the words. My thoughts kept drifting back to the voice, to the memories it had stirred. The rest of the evening passed in a reflective silence. I was alone, yet I felt a connection to something larger, a thread linking me to the past, to my father, and to the mystery of life and death. The experience had been a reminder of the thin veil that separates the ordinary from the extraordinary, the explainable from the unexplainable. Later, as I prepared for bed, the rational explanation seemed less important. Whether it was a hallucination, a dream, or something truly supernatural didn't matter. What mattered was the feeling it had evoked, the sense of closeness to someone I had lost, and the comfort that had come with it. Lying in bed, I closed my eyes, half hoping to hear the voice again. But there was only silence, the peaceful, deep silence of a winter night. I drifted off to sleep, feeling a sense of gratitude for the experience, no matter its nature. The next morning, the world was bright and clear, the snow sparkling under the sun. The events of the previous evening seemed like a distant dream, yet they had a lingering impact. I found myself smiling at small memories of my father, cherishing them more than ever. In the light of day, the supernatural elements of my encounter seemed less dominant. Instead, what remained was the emotional resonance, the feeling of having been visited by a loved one, of having bridged a gap that I thought was unbridgeable. As life returned to its normal rhythm, I carried with me a renewed sense of connection to my father. The boundaries between past and present, between the physical and the spiritual, seemed less rigid. I had experienced something profound, something that defied easy explanation, yet was deeply meaningful. The encounter, whether a figment of my imagination or a true visitation, had changed me. It had brought a sense of peace and closure, a reminder that love and memories transcend time and space. As I went about my days, I found comfort in this thought, in the knowledge that those we lose are never truly gone, but remain with us in the most unexpected and beautiful ways.